This is E.L.Wisty speaking, and I have a very important announcement to make. Perhaps the most important announcement of my life. I am dead.
I first met Peter when John Bird came to my room at Newnham and said I'd just met the funniest man in the world. And that was Peter Cook, who I think probably was the funniest man in the world.
My viper eats like a horse.
Like a horse, eh?
Oh, yes, yes. Yes, I'd like a horse.
It was alarming to see him produce this wonderful stream of stuff, seemingly without any effort, really, just spilled out of him.
When I last saw you, you were in the Pissarro, weren't you? That's right. Well, I said I'll meet outside the abstract, we go through the old Greco, up the Van Eyck, and I'll see you in front of the bloody Rubin.
He was oddly daunting, which I saw later to be a disguise for a person who was in fact quite shy.
I want to be alone! I want to be alone!
Peter? Peter who?
Yes, well, we manufacture Pseudolon.
It's Pseudoline, isn't it, with an E?
Well, as we manufacture it, I think I can call it what I bloody well choose.
Peter became careless of his gifts and then of his life, and there was a side to Peter that was very self-destructive.
I suppose he must have seen some discrepancy between the Dorian Gray that he once was and the Dorian Gray that he ultimately became.
You enjoying that sandwich? Mine's appalling, I'll tell you that much.
Peter Cook was born in Torquay in 1937, the son of a colonial diplomat. His father, who was abroad at his birth, was to first hear of his son by letter.
He grows more and more intelligent. I hope he isn't too forward, because he really is rather remarkably so.
I've blown around the world.
My father was in the colonial service. At the age of 22, he went out to Africa. Foreign parts weren't considered safe for children, and so there were a lot of separations. Peter's male role model at the time was the gardener, following him with a wheelbarrow and picking up leaves and all sorts of horrible things, bugs and things that crept.
Another facet of the ants was the Nazis, with their infinite cunning and bestiality, had trained the ants to eat extremely slowly. What's more, they've got coagulant on their teeth, so when they bite into you, you don't bleed. There's a strange non-bleeding quality about the eating that goes on. And so it takes ages and ages till they've chewed you away to about 1/4 inch you're still living. That's what's so bloody awful about the ants.
The Himalayan bee hibernates for 12 months of the year. It is most usually found underground in the foothills of the Andes.
There's a wonderful book called Ruthless Rhymes for Heartless Homes. That was around all of our childhoods. Very weird, very funny, very strange. When Mrs. Gorm, Aunt Eloise, was stung to death by vicious bees, he had my father's height.
Hello?
Nice bones in the face and everything, and I think the softness around the eyes perhaps comes from Mum. He certainly got the best eyelashes, which I was always a bit... I'd have liked those eyelashes, I think, yes.
At the age of 13, Cook was sent to Radley Public School, where he'd book in weekly visits to the sanatorium to catch the Goon Show.
Once there... Yes. Please don't do that.
Here, Cook would also find the inspiration for his first major comic creation.
There was one man there who waited at the high table. He was called Mr. Boylett, and he was quite a curious man. And he'd come up with odd sentences, and I think I'm quoting him right. He'd say, "I saw a very interesting stone today, and I thought I saw it move."
I can remember him saying things like, you know, if I had the education, I could have done this or that. And Peter, I don't think it was at all unkind, but he would develop that sort of perspective on life.
I could have been a judge, but I never had the Latin. I never had the Latin for the judging. I just never had sufficient of it to get through the rigorous judging exams. They're noted for their rigour. People come staggering out saying, "My God, what a rigorous exam."
He wasn't a rebel, particularly, but he was kind of unclassifiable. Peter and another friend wrote the Black and White Blues, which was a musical specially adapted for this rather specialised form of very small marionettes.
Oh, I'm an old Etonian and try to act the part. I rave about Picasso and prehistoric art. I'm interested in Beethoven, I dabble in Mozart. I play the flute and read the French of Jean-Paul Sartre. My clothes are so...
Peter's monologue in that is amazingly sort of assured and sophisticated for somebody at that time.
If Shakespeare's got another play, I'll tell him where to look. The best producer now in town is Peter Brook.
Anticipating he would follow his father into the Foreign Office, Cook arrived at Cambridge in 1957 to read modern languages. To many in that first year, he was just another face in the crowd.
Right, Anne, we've got 5 minutes. Start pumping.
The following year, he was to become the star of Footlights.
I've got a viper in this box, you know.
Really? Gracious me.
Oh, yes. It's not an asp.
Well, that's good.
Some people can't tell the difference between the viper and the asp. More fool them, I say.
Yeah.
In 1960, Cook was elected Footlights president and again dominated that year's review. Pop goes Mrs. Jessup.
I said, did you know that you got...
On the bill was a guy called Peter Cook who was doing his interesting facts sketch. So my first impression was of this mooncalf face and this stentorian voice. He had tremendous projection when he wanted to call upon it, and a sort of mischievous, cheeky schoolboy inside a full-grown adult.
And I'll tell you the interesting fact about the Arab. The interesting fact about the Arab is he can go for a whole year. He can go for a whole year on 1 grain of rice. That's amazing, isn't it? All he needs is 1 grain of rice a year.
A whole year on 1 grain of rice?
No. That's the mosquito. Now I'll get those muddled up because they're next door to each other in the dictionary.
What are?
Mosquito and mosques.
I worshipped him, and from that moment on, I went to see him whenever I could.
Wherever he was in Cambridge, he would be surrounded with a group of people all falling about with laughter. He had these funny voices and these funny names, and he just had a continual act. And he did, in fact, have a lot of... it was so sort of powerful and so funny that a lot of people copied it, and no one more, as it were, touchingly, and one might say amateurishly, than a young man who came up a year after us called David Frost.
He slipped into voices, was the most amazing ad-libber. I mean, you just asked him to go and he would go, whether it's in private, at a restaurant or wherever. He was the spirit of Cambridge, really, because he was seminal to everybody's sense of humour in that particular stage.